Hello, hello.
GM, how's everyone doing?
Let me just fix my audio. Hopefully you could hear me better now. How's it going, Linus?
Oh, going so well. Eventful day. There's never a boring day here in Web3 and crypto. Would love to, chat more about NFTs and royalties and things like that. But there's, top of mind things. So if we sneak in a little regulatory talk, that's just the way it goes. But I'm doing really well. This is usually past the time I allow myself to have espresso, but for you, Jess, I will.
It's actually I'm East Coast, so it's 8 p.m. here. So I am not having coffee. Otherwise, I will be up all night. But you want to know something, Linus? I actually went back and I looked at the last time you were here, that you came on Crypto and Coffee, and you came on November 11th, which was the day of FTX, like the day that everything broke down. Do you remember now?
I do remember this. I've got impeccable timing, so maybe lessons learned. I won't be invited back to this show.
Oh no, I didn't mean it like that. But yeah, a lot has happened. A lot has happened, and it's definitely good to have you back. A lot has happened to them. But yeah, I mean, obviously, we know each other. But I'll give you a minute to introduce yourself to everybody here. But it's great to have you back. We're back here for another episode of Espresso Hour. Before we get started, let me give my little disclaimer. Nothing said here is financial advice. We are not financial advisors, strictly for entertainment and educational purposes. But yeah, Linus, I appreciate you being here, coming back and chatting with me.
Oh, I appreciate you having me. It's always fun. But yeah, totally love that disclaimer. It's not financial advice. This is all funny money anyway, right? So yeah, just a little bit about myself. I've been in the crypto space personally for the last 6 years or so. Was fortunate enough to learn about Bitcoin and pass on that opportunity, and then the third time somebody like sat me down and told me about it, started going down the rabbit hole, and that led to a big run up in 2017, which I enjoyed. But then after the crash, went really deep in the technology of like, what are these coins in my account here? That led to me looking at some projects, investing a little bit, and then also kind of joining Coinbase. And so that was in 2018. I stayed there for about 4 years, building product in a number of different areas. And I'd say over the last 2 years or so, I got even deeper down the rabbit hole of Web3, participating in DeFi Summer, going degen on a bunch of NFTs, and realized that that was the future. That was what I wanted to work on. And so I joined Origin Protocol about a year ago, where I focus on their NFT platform. So I lead product and business development there. A little bit Origin, we've been building since 2017. On the NFT side of the house, we've got a platform that does sort of full end-to-end, from mints to marketplaces, token gated access, incentivization, and those kinds of things for creators. A creator platform that we think is more important than ever. Our original mission at Origin was to enable peer-to-peer commerce without intermediaries. That's what the blockchain was made for, really to combat the centralization that we saw in Web 2. And we want to bring that to NFTs. And so really excited to chat more about it. We'll get into it. But we see ourselves as kind of building out more of a decentralized alternative to what we have in the market today, which is effectively, a couple of big centralized marketplaces that are kind of like dictating the terms of how NFTs are done.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing that intro. And yeah, and if we talk about like the last time that you were here, November 2022, this is like when the whole marketplace wars was like stirring up. Blur was starting, was starting to come out. You had all the marketplace trying to go down to 0% royalty fees, so pretty much taking the control away from the creators. So what is the stance that yourself and like, or as a product leader at Origin are taking as far as like creator royalties and who should really control it?
Yeah, absolutely. We are incredibly 1,000% pro creator, right? We ultimately believe there would be no NFTs, there would be no value in this space were it not for amazing creators in the space. And more, I believe that NFTs is more than just for art, right? Certainly there's, hey, I've created this piece of art, you can enjoy it, and it's really about the art. I view NFTs as definitely that. That's very, very important. But it's a new medium for founders. Basically, this is a way to build a startup, and those creators, those entrepreneurs, went into the space with particular kind of assumptions about a social contract for how they would get compensated and how they would build their business. And we think that that should be dictated by the creator should set prices for their products, and the market should determine whether or not if customers want to purchase that, they can, knowing full well what the rules are. And we don't think that ultimately third party marketplaces should be making those calls. I'll caveat all of this to say OpenSea, Blur, X2Y2, all of these marketplaces, they've built phenomenal businesses. I can't say that like they have definitely helped to grow the space and grow adoption, and they've helped a bunch of folks. No disrespect to them, we just take a very, very different approach to how we think that the space needs to evolve. And our basic premise here is that the industry and creators and collectors deserve choice in the matter, right? And I don't think that it's particularly right that these centralized marketplaces can make these unilateral decisions that really benefit their business without thinking about the consequences of the entire ecosystem of folks that helps build the space. Ultimately, if creators don't get paid for their work and if they can't find sustainable business models, then that's really bad for everybody, right? We won't like these JPEGs that we're flinging around won't really have value, and the cynics will probably be right, that these are just JPEGs and we were all suckers. But ultimately, I do believe that if folks can actually build decentralized brands, if they could build these games, if they can build this IP, that we're onto something much, much bigger than just the JPEGs, and that's why I got into the space.
Yeah, that's a great point. And do you think, like, for me, like, just in my personal opinion, I feel like these marketplace are targeting different audiences, and maybe not the audience that we feel is going to bring Web3 forward. For example, like Blur. Obviously, their target user is a trader, somebody who's going to constantly be having activity, and they're getting incentivized for that. Do you think there's enough space for different types of platforms for different audiences? Or do you think overall it could still have a negative impact on the space in general, just like like what we've seen in the past few months?
Absolutely. This is a great question. Ultimately, I do think that there are different demographics that if this space is to grow to be, ultimately, I may sound crazy now, but hey, if this is recorded, maybe we'll look back in a couple of years and say, hey, maybe I was right. But I think ultimately NFTs are just a medium to, represent assets, right? Represent something of value that can be fully digital or it can be physical, but ultimately, I think NFTs will wrap trillions of dollars worth of value. Um, and if that is to happen, then there's got to be different demographics that are in it for very, very different reasons. And where we're heading right now with kind of Blur appealing to a particular demographic around pro traders, Blur rewards farmers and things like that, and then to see OpenSea kind of like take this like follow on to that approach with all these folks kind of chasing after these pro traders. I ultimately believe that we're missing the forest for the trees. That there are many different demographics here that are at play. I do believe that if you take certain analogies, there are the financial markets, and this even happens in crypto. There are people that are called market makers, and they're not necessarily interested in like making a bet on a particular token. They play a very, very important role in the space by providing liquidity, and they make they make tiny amounts of fees by trading back and forth between two pairs of assets. And super, super important. Were it not for them, you would have very, very illiquid assets. But imagine you've got a stock market, or you've got decentralized exchange that purely thinks about only that one demographic. You don't have a well balanced financial system. So I do think that there is a huge cohort of folks that will only grow as we become more mainstream. Maybe when the bull market comes back, maybe when the perception challenges change about NFTs, that want to invest in something in the long run, or don't even think about NFTs as an investment in the first place. They think about it in terms of consumption. They think about it in terms of, this is something I want to hang on to forever, or this is utility, like I want to use it for a game. And those kinds of folks might want a different experience. And those kinds of folks might be incentivized to pay those royalties, or to leverage certain utility that might not be available if we continue to move down this path of only thinking about one very narrow set of folks. I think it is symptomatic of, we are in a bear market right now, and businesses are just trying to survive, and they realize that overall NFT trading volumes might be down. And so how do you appeal to those folks that are, playing in this game right now? It kind of reminds me a little bit of my Coinbase experience when I first joined. It was 2018. There was not a whole lot going on in crypto, and there was not a whole lot of volatility. Prices were down, and they were also just kind of flat. And we saw the rise of folks like Binance and things like that. And, there was always conversations internally of like, oh man, Binance is kicking our butt. Like, what should we be doing? And yet at the same time, we would be making moves towards appealing to that market. So for example, Coinbase launched two different products. One was Coinbase, the normal Coinbase.com and Coinbase Retail app that you're probably most familiar with, where it's very, very easy to buy Bitcoin or Ethereum with the touch of a button. And then we also had this Coinbase Pro, which was a separate app that had the candlestick charts, all these sorts of very, very advanced things that appeal to a very different audience. Now, if we had basically abandoned that sort of like simple, elegant trading app for the retail consumer and went all in on Pro, we wouldn't be worth, Coinbase would not be as big as it is today. It wouldn't have 110 million customers. So like thinking about things like, hey, there is a bear market where the people that are active are probably very, very advanced traders, and thinking about, serving them, versus kind of thinking long term of like, hey, folks will be back. They will want more elegant experiences. They will want simpler experiences to onboard them. Maybe they don't mind paying a little bit more for just security, ease. And I think that there's an analogy here for NFTs of folks that are in it for the community, that wants to be long-term collectors, that love their pudgy penguins, that love their Bored Apes, that love their whatever it is, and they feel a sense of attachment to it. And I think we got to be building for those folks, and we have to be building for a world where creators can appeal to those folks, and even give them even more reasons to want to pay those royalties. And I think that it's just a tough thing, and I empathize with builders in the space during a bear market of like, how do you balance serving the folks that are still here, that might be a very, very deep and committed audience, but ultimately a small number of people, versus surviving and being visionary of like thinking, hey, in 1 to 3 years, this thing's going to be way bigger than what it is, because we're going to onboard way more folks that aren't even thinking about crypto and NFTs right now. And I think it's a tough thing, but ultimately I believe in the space, and I believe that NFTs are just going to be huge, and they're just not going to be as huge as we want them to be if we're just narrowly focused on, carving up a very, very small pie of what it is today.
I completely agree. And it's interesting to see like the different approaches that these different marketplaces are taking. And on the other side, you guys are taking with Origin Store, you guys are taking the more personal branded approach, which is kind of interesting. And actually, like, quick little story, over the weekend, I ended up creating my own website. And yes, I have a presence on all these different platforms, but at the end of the day, like, I felt like I needed something that was my own, that people could come and know, hey, yes, this is me. And then, it's kind of like the same thing that you guys are doing, but for marketplaces. And even when you think about it, and when you're trying to appeal to the masses, it's typically, hey, you're going to go to a brand's website and be able to do everything that you want to do on that website and not have to go somewhere else to purchase this. So tell us a little bit more about, origin story and kind of like the approach that you guys are taking with that product.
Absolutely. I think more and more, among our team as well as our community, we're talking about, we use an analogy in Web 2 where in Web 2, in e-commerce, you know, there are big aggregators in e-commerce where, they kind of aim to be the everything store. And those are companies like eBay and Amazon. And they're fantastic. Trust me, I buy a lot of stuff on Amazon, probably too much stuff. When you're looking for commodity things, right? Like, look, I just need to, stock up on shampoo or, buy this and that. Um, but then there's also a very, very large opportunity for branded websites. And so there are many platforms out there. Shopify comes to mind. Even in this market today, very, very large company that has created massive opportunities for small business owners, founders, and even larger companies like started to build on Shopify because their platform just became so robust over time and trusted. And this is not a thing that you wanted to build from scratch. And so, both of those things can exist, but they kind of serve different purposes for both the end user who's a shopper on these platforms and also the merchants themselves, right? And so we aim to be kind of the Shopify for NFTs, offering that other option, right? And so if you are, a NFT company, an NFT brand, and you want to build something different, and you want to have a bit more of a branded experience, and you want to own the relationship with the customer, and you want to build something new, like we are a platform that builds for tools that allows you to start doing that. Now, some of those things that might be more custom and unique to your platform, that you want to be doing something cutting edge, maybe you got to build your own team to do those things. But ultimately, what we're trying to do is make sure that you're not reinventing the wheel, right? That you've got amazing tools that just help you kickstart your business and run it on your own terms. And we think there's a place for both. But ultimately, it's like, the way that people value some of these NFTs and certainly the dollar value of where it's going, I find it hard in the Web 2 world. It's like, I don't know anybody that would go and shop for a Rolex on eBay. Maybe those people exist, but it is one of those experiences that is a very considered purchase. You might want
Does
to
it
talk to
even
somebody, you
come
might want to go
up?
to a
Now
website.
I'm like interested if you'll even find one. Go ahead, keep going.
Oh yeah, I'm sure you will. I'm sure there's a market for that, but it is one of those things where I probably wouldn't, right? Like there's probably a very, very used kind of like healthy market. Actually, the more I think about it, there is a very healthy market for secondaries, but you probably just wouldn't go to eBay for that. You would go to people in the know. You'd go to specialized websites that are like, hey, we have some authentication that each one of these secondhand Rolexes is real. And you kind of go to those websites. I mean, like now that I think about it, like goat.com is a fantastic example of this, where there are these sneakerheads, and that was a category that was pulled out of eBay. And they built just a better experience for that, right? Because, yeah, just because you want authenticity, and there is a market for these things. And so we are that platform that can build that alternative. And so, yeah, that's kind of what we're doing. So if, for example, Jess, if you ever want to launch actually, you've probably launched NFTs. I'm sorry, I don't know this, but if you're ever interested in building your own marketplace or building out tools in your own branded website, we hope that you'd consider using some of the tools that we've built. We just think that the NFTs are going to be much more vibrant when they're not just one size fits all. Don't get me wrong, love me some 10K PFP collections, but I do think that the next wave of NFTs there will be more diversity of these things. The mythical Web3 game that's going to take over everything. Like, imagine Imagine you are like in the middle of an intense gaming session with your friends, and you want to just, get a new outfit, or, buy a new weapon or something like that, and you're redirected to Blur. It just doesn't make sense, right? In the future, there will be more integrated experiences, more custom experiences, and the space just needs infrastructure to help that kind of ecosystem grow.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And for those in the audience that are not familiar, I know one of the marketplace that's powered by you guys is Pudgy Penguins. Is a very well known project in the space. Great website that they have, and I know you guys have also partnered with like Paris Hilton and many others. But yeah, and what as like a project or a community, and no, Linus, I don't have an NFT project. I don't know if I'm going to start one. Maybe I will, but I'll definitely consider you guys if I do. But what would be something like, what is something unique that maybe some of the platforms are on there are doing, or that they could possibly do in the future, aside from just like buying and selling an NFT on a regular marketplace?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it looks like Coffee Pod has shared a tweet from about our partnership with Roofstock, and I think that that's a fantastic, like, perfect example of something to highlight. So Roofstock, by background, is a Web2 giant in the real estate space. In their history, what they've done is they've sold over $5 billion in kind of transaction volume of homes online. So think about that, like even just disrupting the real estate industry by bringing that online was a huge feat. But give credit where credit is due. They're not satisfied with that. Just buying homes online wasn't enough for them. They wanted to do homes on chain, and so they came up with this idea of like, what if we could kind of tokenize ownership of real estate and put that on chain somehow? And they realized NFTs were the way to wrap that. So they came to us with this concept, and it was a very, very small team. As these things work, often just a very, very small skunkworks team has this idea, not a ton of resources, and they're looking for external kind of expertise. And I felt like a very, very perfect marriage. And so what we did was we built their official marketplace for transacting and purchasing NFTs, and the owner of that NFT ultimately legally owns that home in real life. And I'm not talking about metaverse home. I'm talking about like a home in South Carolina or Alabama, and it's a rental property that immediately helps them earn passive income while they are kind of like waiting for the real estate price to appreciate. And transfer of ownership in the NFT just happened instantly through our peer-to-peer marketplace, and it was a phenomenal thing. And so when you think about that experience, yes, technically, because it is an NFT, because it is interoperable, one could have purchased that NFT on OpenSea. But because we're talking about real world assets and something that has to be compatible with real world regulations, there were other requirements that had to create that beautiful experience. First, you think about the buyer themselves, like what kind of information would they want to know about about this home, right? And so we built this website that was fully integrated with a virtual data room where they could see photos, recent inspection reports, all the things they would need to know in a normal housing transaction. You don't just look at like, oh man, look at this rare trait, it's got 3 bedrooms, right? Like, no. You want to look at all these things, and you want to make sure that this is fully legitimate, because you are purchasing a real world home. Second, when you're getting ready to purchase, we can't just take anonymous people on the blockchain. Unfortunately, we have to know who the buyer or the seller is, and so there's a KYC process. So they go through a KYC process that's off chain. We make sure that this person is a legitimate person, that there's not like sort of like money laundering and things like that, and they're sort of privately doxing themselves. Then we put that person's wallet onto an allow list that allows them to transact. And so these are things that actually need to be features that built around the traditional marketplace that wouldn't be relevant for every project, but they're certainly relevant in our case. And those are just a few examples of how we were able to use NFTs and marketplace technology and the kind of like customizable platform that we've built to enable net new use cases. And I think that those use cases are just going to explode. But we could definitely go deeper into real estate. It's just a fascinating use case for NFTs. Really proud of the team for what they've done here.
Yeah, that was really great to learn more about that. And no, and just like the example that you just gave, like it's kind of like a custom workflow for that project. Because I was speaking to a friend, which I actually he's listening, and he was kind of, ooh, oh, I thought we lost Linus. No, we didn't. And he was talking about how he wanted to implement, an NFT project and have some type of like certification process or kind of like the same thing, not KYC, but kind of like a review of credentials and things like that. So definitely seems interesting that maybe that's something that could work for him. But yeah, pretty cool.
Yeah, absolutely. And so the way that we also did this was typically there's a lot of work that's done for a real estate agent. In this case, Roofstock acts as the real estate agent. And so that's actually coded into the creator fees. And so that's when we started doing this, um, creator fees were the norm, right? It was socially accepted. It was one of those things that we knew was not coded into the smart contracts or the blockchain itself, um, but it was just a social convention. And now, it's just an interesting thing where OpenSea and Blur started to go to minimum royalties and things like that. And so there's even a bit more of this kind of just pressure, or really just a need to figure out like how, what are the creative ways to ensure that creators get paid, or just like in this case, not even a creator, it is a key person that's like adds significant value, and there's like reasons why they should be compensated for the work that they're doing, and for there to be kind of these workarounds where people can kind of like transfer ownership and make these sales without paying the real estate agent. I mean, there might be some free market libertarian type folks in the audience, bless you, that would say, hey, we don't need to pay the real estate agent. But in this case, they really did do a lot of work to onboard and showcase properties and things like that. And so it is one of those things that I think it's only right that some of these folks just get paid for their hard work.
It's pretty cool. And I do see we have Kareem up here. What's up? Welcome. Hey, Leo.
Hey, hey, Jess. It's a cool damn space, and it's funny because I was working on something that I'm definitely gonna get with you, Linus. Sorry, I hope I'm saying that right. I got one bad eye. I haven't eaten in a couple days, but I was I was working on something myself as far as the NFT projects, and I got like three different things that I've been trying to work around, and one of them was like, for instance, real estate, and it's pretty neat that you brought that up because one of the utility, like what I want, what I envision is like an NFT project where you mint, and depending on the mint, like you can buy, for instance, a condo like an Airbnb, and that is part of the utility where, as a rental, whatever income comes in gets distributed through the process, as far as through the project, and have it to where it has a value, and to build the value is like, okay, for instance, you know how does that benefit the NFT holder? Well, whether it's once a year, it'll be drawn, and whoever is selling the NFTs, those NFTs get bought out by, for instance, a percentage of the project that gets put in there, and those NFTs get burned, and there'll be less and less. You know what I'm saying? And you gave me a lot of good ideas with what you just said, because I definitely want to get with you and see if we can do something.
Yeah, yeah, would love to talk. We've heard some really, really creative ideas. Don't know if this is like very related to your idea, but we've certainly heard ideas around, hotels or Airbnbs where they basically tokenize every night of staying. And so, like, imagine, there's a hotel. You buy up, these hotel nights, and kind of instead of just like canceling, and so like then the hotel has this job of like, oh man, I have to go find another buyer for this night. What if there was a liquid secondary market for kind of these hotel nights? And what if you could actually like offload and or even just make money off of, hey, I can't make this trip anymore, but maybe somebody else wants it. Hey, there's these interesting ideas around kind of tokenizing even night stays in Airbnbs or hotels. And I just think that the more we can build tools for people in the space, the more just creativity can come from things, right? Like we don't like some of these experiments might not work, but just the more we allow people to experiment with new things, we might find that there's just like these brand new ways of thinking about a problem or doing business that like we would have never came up with if we were just completely stuck in our old ways.
Yeah, I love it. And like the other thing was that I've been working on was we came out with like a caulking, caulking for houses and stuff like that. And I did want to incorporate that, and it's ready to go. But I can't really just go to Home Depot and say, hey, I got caulking for mass production and stuff like that. But I just don't have the liquidity to go ahead and stock up a Lowe's or Home Depot. And how can I utilize that in Web3? That's another thing I was working on. It's just a lot of things working, but it's just trying to put it down and say, okay, can this really work?
So many possibilities, so many possibilities. But yeah, great questions. And thanks, Leo, for coming up. Yeah, if anybody wants to come up and chime in or ask any questions, feel free to hit request. Um, but yeah, that's great to hear everything that's going on with Origin Story and the marketplaces. And I know you guys recently had a governance vote that eliminated the marketplace fees. So how is that going to work? So is does that mean like buying and selling, or for the creator minting no fees for the marketplace, but still being able to control the royalties? Is that what it is?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way our marketplace was set up, well, the way it is set up is there's a marketplace fee that goes to basically Origin protocol, right? And so we actually don't pocket that as a company. It actually goes back to our community, right? We're decentralized. So anybody that actually owns our governance and value accrual token, which is OGN, they can stake those tokens and actually earn basically their pro rata share of marketplace fees, right? And so all that, it was a 1.25%, right? We were at the time undercutting OpenSea, basically cutting their fee in half, but giving that back to our community so that our community members and basically also the users of our platform ultimately can kind of share in kind of the success of our marketplaces. What we found with these like very, very intense marketplace wars is like fees were like royalties were the first thing to go. Crazy, right? Like OpenSea kind of moved to optional royalties without even changing their fee. Like basically these marketplaces started like cutting creators out while still taking their fees. And so ultimately, we're seeing that even marketplace fees are getting cut to 0%. And so we realized that this is the time to actually help creators, right? I think this is a time for Origin's platform to shine. And ultimately, we had this kind of like dilemma of like, okay, well, do we optimize for generating near-term fees, or do we optimize for the long term, where we think ultimately the long term is the opportunity is huge, and now is the time to create more value into the space. And so we put out a governance proposal to temporarily reduce our trading fees, our marketplace fees to 0%. Ultimately, then what that means here is a very simple message for people that use our platform, which is just pay the royalties. So our royalties for creators are fully honored. That goes 100% of the royalties. And so our community kind of like looked at the proposal, discussed it, and it passed. I think ultimately what that means is like people are very, very excited about the long-term potential, less worried about the next couple of months of fees, and ultimately that's what we're trying to do, right? We're trying to onboard as many creators as possible and support them. For our existing creators, thinking about ways that we can promote usage of the platform, give their customers many more reasons to shop on an official marketplace that honors royalties. That's really what we're focused on right now, not near-term fee generation.
I think that's awesome. Thanks, Linus. I did bring up Bitcoin Profit. Welcome, Bitcoin Profit. Are you there?
Hello.
Hey, how's it
Hi, how
going?
are you?
Did you have a question or comment? Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me. Yeah, no, I don't have anything specific. I just wanted to encourage everyone that's listening tonight or this morning or wherever you are in the world to buy art, buy digital art. Let's push the space forward. Let's all be a building block for this space. Um, yeah, just wanted to say that's very important that we push and propel this space forward however we can. And I think purchasing digital art is the way to do it. I also think it's a really smart way to protect one's portfolio against all the crypto volatility and, imagining
Not financial advice, but what are your
not
thoughts?
financial
What are your
advice, of
thoughts
course
about
not.
NFT marketplaces and just like the creator royalties that everybody's been changing it up? Is there how have you been picking where to display your art, where to put your art up?
Was that for me?
Yeah,
Sorry.
that's for you.
Oh yeah. Well, yeah. Just to preface, I started buying one of one art in 2019. I think middle of 19 on Super Rare. And, I kind of saw the writing on the wall with regulation. Most of the shit coins going, getting just shut down or getting disappeared or rug pulled. And I just thought, you know what, this sucks. Like, if I have to invest in a roadmap, most of which is a bunch of garbage, I can just buy art because I know it exists. I know what I'm buying. Um, and From mostly people that are honest and builders. So I don't have an art background. I just thought, hey, this is a more fun, safe place to park capital and protect wealth and maybe build wealth. So yeah, I'm now one of the biggest collectors on Super Rare in the world. It's a great honor. And a lot of the artists I bought from are now in, Sotheby's, Christie's, and all that, which is great. Um, right now I display my art to answer your question on just my computer and some frames I have. But I've also really been focusing more on combos, the NFT art with the physical pairing. If there's a physical piece, I love that aspect. There's something about touching, hanging a physical piece, just as it's beautiful to see it on a frame and have that token. I still have some cryptos I'm bullish on, 5, 6 core positions, but for the most part, I'm probably 80% of my crypto money is not even crypto. It's really digital art. So that's it. Just
Awesome.
wanted to say buy digital art,
Not
and unless you're
financial
holding blue
advice.
chips. Yeah.
No, we appreciate your input. But you brought up a great topic, and maybe Linus, I'll throw this back to you. Like, what are your thoughts about, NFTs and connecting it with like a physical item, I mean, and is there anything maybe you guys have in the works for the future to make that happen, or maybe something there is in place now?
Yeah. So we've developed products and flows for token gated claims. So that's already live and something that we've built. Obviously looking for amazing partners that want to test it out. But effectively, it is kind of thinking about. Well, let me step back. When we think about NFTs, at least our kind of protocol perspective here is there's like basically three phases to NFTs. We think the first phase is digital assets, digitally native assets, and that's where digital art, these PFPs, we feel like they were like the perfect testing ground for NFTs because they didn't have to have this you know, they didn't have to have connections to the physical world. They didn't have to deal with like KYC and other things like how do we deal with like regulations and things like that. It's purely kind of like trading these purely digital things that live online, and I think that like that has helped accelerate the space and mature it forward. We think moving into the second phase, which we think is the utility phase, that's where things like connections to physical assets becomes a lot more important, right? But we think a part of that is also like, hey, like using this digital only asset for something else, like, oh, it's usable in a game. But other things like, oh, I can claim physical tickets to some event, or some physical kind of signed poster from this particular artist. And I know that there are solutions that are out there, but quite honestly, much respect to all the folks that are like pioneering in the space. But they are disjoint, and so that's the beauty of what we think a platform like Origin can do, is it can be fully integrated within the marketplace. And so what we have here is maybe take a look at your current experience, right? Let's take a look at like Bored Apes, right? When you buy a Bored Ape, this is a broken analogy, but I'm just going to make this up. Let's say that you buy a Bored Ape and it comes with one free ticket to some event like Ape Fest, right? But you can only claim it once. The experience that you probably have right now is like you go on an OpenSea or you Blur, and they wouldn't have this information. You'd actually have to go and check somewhere else. They say definitely just check the official Yuga website, type in the token ID number, and then check to see if these things were claimed or not. Otherwise, you might be buying a thing thinking you'd get access to some event or some perk, and you actually find that it's already been claimed. That's basically this experience that NFT natives have to go through basically every week that some claim or some drop happens. And so we think that there's just a better way to kind of build an integrated experience, and that's kind of what we built, where it's integrated into the marketplace. You can kind of see right from then and there what perks have been claimed and what haven't been. And you can buy and sell in the marketplace, and you can claim securely through that. And there's kind of flows that could kind of like really connect you to some physical item that might make this a bit more real to you. So long-winded way of saying we have live products, but we think that is a huge next wave of opportunity of connecting the digital ownership aspect of it to physical things in the real world, and then just making sure that entire experience of like claiming securely and making sure that buyers and sellers kind of know what has been claimed and hasn't been claimed, that entire experience can really be wrapped up much more nicely into a marketplace experience.
I completely agree. Like even with like projects, they're doing a different drop. You have to go to this website to sign up for the whitelist. Then you have to go over here to check whether you're valid or not. Claim it on this other website. Make sure it's the right one. And then, hope that you get your NFT and don't get rugged after clicking on 10 different websites. So I totally get it. And
Yeah.
sometimes I just don't do it because it's too much work. I'm like, okay, I got to get this ledger and do this. I'm like, oh my God, like just make it easy.
1,000%. Yeah, I think that like this is where scams happen, right? Where people just get tricked into going to a different website. It leaves people with a bad taste in their mouth, and they're kind of like, yeah, this whole thing was pretty insecure. That's where you start to get the, that reputation that, yeah, NFTs are a scam. And that's a really, really bad look. And then for creators, more and more, the feedback that we're hearing is like, okay, like, yeah, I know I can use this company that specializes in one thing. I know I can use this and that, but they don't have the time, and they don't want to just deal with a ton of different platforms, ton of different companies, ton of different vendors. They really would like one stop that could kind of like aggregate all of those services for them. Not to say that like we would then as Origin turn into some centralized conglomerate or anything, but we do think that there is like beauty in just like an integrated experience where you kind of just working with one protocol, one platform that can kind of take care of your needs, and it's all integrated. And so that's what we're trying to do. And we don't want to build by ourselves. We want to build in public with everybody here. So it's a full ecosystem. That's what Web3 is. So we kind of partner with folks in the space and kind of bring it all together.
That's great to hear. Yeah, that would make it so much easier, and it would make it more attractive to somebody that's not from this space to just go to an official website and be able to do everything. And speaking of that, of like, attracting to the quote unquote normies, like we saw Reddit and their NFTs take off, just because they made that experience so easy for people that didn't have a crypto wallet. Is there anything that you guys have in place or are working on that makes that experience easier for users that might not have a crypto wallet or are not into crypto, and helping them get onboarded through these marketplaces?
Yeah, absolutely. So the one of the top requests from creators and collectors is just being able to easily swipe with a credit card and purchase their NFTs. So we partnered with Crossmint, and basically on all of our websites or all of our marketplaces right now, you can easily use credit card of choice and purchase in fiat. Crossmint also offers kind of a custodial wallet solution if that's what you're looking for. We will soon be also integrating Magic Link, which offers similar, just beautiful kind of experience where you can kind of secure kind of a crypto wallet, an NFT wallet with email and password, and 2FA. Basically, more of the kind of familiar Web2 approach. Ultimately, though, previously there's always just been this trade-off. Some of it's ideological, some of it is a little bit more practical of custodial versus self-custody. And ultimately, we think that there is a world that will be kind of like reality pretty soon, where you don't have to make that trade-off. Like you don't have to trust a centralized party to hold your NFTs or hold your assets for you, in order to get that easy experience, right? And so rest in peace to my FTX NFTs. I had a couple of NFTs on there, and like that was the only thing that I had on FTX, fortunately. But those NFTs are gone, right? So some of those were actually Coachella fan NFTs, others were Golden State Warriors. But like you get utility and you get a connection to those organizations if you're a fan. And like that really sucks for those organizations that trusted FTX to like store that. And like there is no record of that. There is no direct connection between those organizations and their fans that are holding those NFTs because FTX forced you to hold it on their platform. But a lot of the kind of improvements that are coming out on the Ethereum blockchain, specifically about account abstraction, I'm really excited about. And so this is where you can get the benefits of self-custody with kind of like the security of self-custody, where you don't have to trust anybody, and you can kind of like just log in with an email and password, and you can do amazing things. And like if I lose my password, there's things like social recovery, like, oh yeah, contact Jess and contact 4 other friends of mine to help me get back into my wallet. And those are the kinds of things that actually like are becoming reality right now, and like we're really excited to push the space forward.
Yeah, I'm super excited about account abstraction. We talked about that a couple of weeks ago on the show. So really looking forward to like what innovation that's going to bring to the space. So definitely looking forward to that. But yeah, we are coming up at the top of the hour. Anything that maybe I missed or that you want to leave us with? Anything exciting that you guys got coming out? Any alpha? Now is the time.
Ooh,
Always
alpha.
gonna ask
I'll
for alpha, but
refrain
if
from
you
that.
can't,
I'll
I
refrain.
understand.
Yeah. Well, I guess I'd encourage everybody similarly, support your favorite creators. Just consider a different way to shop. If you're a creator, if you got an NFT project out there, we just love to talk and see how we can support you. We think that there are other ideas that are floating around out there, like that are super, super interesting. If you're a builder in the space, if you're thinking about like new NFT standards that might honor royalties, different ways to kind of incentivize folks to pay royalties. We've got a couple of things up our sleeve that are coming up soon. We actually tweeted a preview of this. We are actively working and it'll soon be there, but leaderboards will be available on our marketplaces that basically showcase who has been paying the most royalties, right? And so that's where I think this becomes interesting, where you've seen the power of the leaderboard for Blur, where people are like, earning these imaginary points. And what are they earning the imaginary points for? Well, putting in bids and like taking on risk and buying a bunch of NFTs that they may or may not have wanted. And like that's not great for the space, right? For people to complain, oh, I was bidding on Blur points and then I ended up with these NFTs that I didn't want. And it's like, that sounds like they're shitting on this project that actually might be a great project to somebody else, and it's just not a good look. And so ultimately, these point systems that have been created for these centralized companies like Blur ultimately are tracking things that benefit Blur. And what we want to do is basically track the things of like who's doing the behavior that ultimately benefits the creator or the community. We're starting with royalties, but we think there's other things that we can start tracking. We'd love to hear folks' feedback on that.
Yeah, that's awesome. I did invite a couple of people up. I know, Bianca, you're an NFT founder. Any thoughts about our conversation today? And welcome.
Hi, thanks for inviting me. Yeah, I was like, oh, this is like right up my alley and what we spoke about last time, especially when it comes to community building. So that's awesome. Um, I think one of the biggest things is kind of finding innovation when it comes to building communities and having like kind of like a creator toolkit. So this is really awesome to kind of to hear about. But yes, as a founder, when it comes to an NFT, and I'm a co-founder with Lunatics NFT, and something that we're building essentially is that we're trying to lead the next generation of fine art by harnessing the power of blockchain and kind of creating a new movement and onboarding the next generation of collectors. And I feel like this would be right up our alley.
It would be it is a flex. Like, you're the collector that's paid the most royalties. Like, that is a flex in a good way.
Oh yeah. Would love to just hear the feedback once we get that out there. But yeah, that's Bianca. It's great to hear about your project. Uh, yeah, I mean, we'd love to see how we can help and any feedback that you have.
Sure, yeah. I went ahead and sent an email actually right before I was invited to speak, but I think I guess let me kind of break down as a founder what we are, and perhaps maybe then you can kind of plug in how you would see yourself fitting into that. That way other people who are listening in could then hopefully connect with you as well. But like I mentioned, Lunatics NFT, our mission is to lead the next generation of fine art by harnessing the power of blockchain. I think one of the biggest things that we recognize is that the fine art industry has historically outperformed the S&P 500, and there's several investors who specifically um, are quoted in notable articles about investing in specific fine art. And we believe that by embracing the blockchain technology and really creating new opportunities for artists and collectors to connect and transact, we can really build a more vibrant and dynamic, socially responsible art ecosystem that benefits everybody involved, especially when it comes to royalties as well. I think that's something that I believe a lot of artists, especially in the fine art industry, have a really tough time. Like once they sell their art, it's kind of either up to the gallery, or really they are kind of left after selling that initial piece. And obviously, there's a little bit more that goes in depth when it comes to fine art. But I think that there really has yet to be a really cool project that really harnesses the power of community, investing opportunities, and being able to create a really cool, I guess, like ecosystem for everybody involved.
I love
You
it.
know, it's
I love it.
you know what's crazy. I was in a space for books and profits the other day, and I can't remember who it was, but they said that the actual count, I think it said 90,000 total people into our NFTs right now. And as we continue to grow, it's going to be massive. The wave that's going to come, and if you have the right project and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to it, because if you really think about it, you break down, for instance, wallets. Like, gosh, I don't even know how many I got. So take probably 100 I've thrown away. Just burned and whatever I don't use, but it trims down, and everybody here with NFTs does the same thing, as far as burn wallets and mint wallets and all that stuff. But it goes to show you how early we are right now. If you have the right project and the product and stuff like that into Web3, I mean, it's going to be awesome in a few years.
Absolutely. I think one of the more notable, and I'm going to give them a shout out, even though we're not necessarily 100% partnered with them, but they are actually signed with our lead artist, Christopher Lizarraga, who is signed with the House of Fine Art. And they're actually um, they have their entire new direction that they're trying to really onboard all of their collectors to on the blockchain technology so that they can make sure that one, every time somebody purchases an in real life art, that there is some sort of transaction behind it, and also so that it's authenticated on the blockchain. We recently had a fractionalization of a really, really cool art piece that happened on the blockchain, and you see these individual collectors who wouldn't be able to necessarily afford a 50,000, you know, item or art piece can now fractionalize. And what's really interesting is when it was the reveal of the actual, like when they minted and they had the reveal, if you, I don't know, got the eye of this specific art piece, all of a sudden your $100 mint is now worth way more. So it's really interesting, the kind of the direction that a lot of NFTs, are going in, especially when it comes to fine art. I'm particularly obviously interested in that as a co-founder myself. And I think creating an ecosystem and having a really cool balance between just art, NFT culture, blockchain technology would be really, really interesting. And I think is the new wave. So I'm really excited. Hopefully we can get together and I can kind of explore where Origin is at with that.
Yeah, that's so awesome. And since we're here, and you kind of asked how I think Origin could fit in and help a project like yours. First of all, I don't purport to know anything about fine arts. You're the expert. I ultimately I want to sit down with you and just learn more. But just off the top of my head, like why I think NFTs are so amazing, and probably you might share my enthusiasm. First of all, is like that digital authenticity, right? Like I'll just I come from a generation that I don't really get art. I'm not in that circle. And ultimately, I think NFTs might be a way to onboard kind of a digitally native generation that the traditional fine art world might seem inaccessible to them. But the beauty of NFTs is like, well, the information is all out there, right? I can see on the blockchain all this amazing data of like what's popular. If I like a particular artist, I can go down that rabbit hole and see, okay, what does this artist collect? What collectors of this artist, what else do they collect? And so what Origin also does, integrated in our marketplace, has this amazing community dashboard where you can kind of see things like the top holders, what other NFTs they hold, statistics about certain things. And so that could be just an amazing kind of discovery mechanism for people to kind of say, well, I like this one artist. How can I learn more about that? And previously, I'm just, repeating back what I understand about the fine art space. Is like you'd have to have like an art broker or somebody who'd be like, hey, like this is, you like this, let me show you some other stuff. And like that's probably inaccessible for most people. And so this is potentially a very, very like democratizing force to basically allow people to find out what they're interested in. So that's one. And obviously, we talked a lot about creator royalties, right? Like, I think with artists in particular, they would get discouraged ultimately if they don't get paid for their work. And so, like, partnering and having a solution for kind of like a marketplace or some sort of a solution where it's kind of guaranteed and it's kind of incentivized for people to kind of contribute to the artist is really important. And then lastly, of course, I do think the liquidity is very important for art, right? If art is this amazing asset class that definitely has outperformed the S&P, which I definitely believe and I have heard, one of the downsides is the illiquidity of art, right? And so like it really is this kind of like hack for the wealthy of like, if I can afford to put all this wealth into art but not worry about it for several years, I can. And here's, that fractionalization that you talked about, that liquidity of like instant access. If I needed to, I can always kind of like, sell it, hopefully for a profit. I think that like having that marketplace is not just about financial speculation. It's actually ultimately about financial inclusivity that allows people to like take that bet to say, hey, I will invest in this because I know that it's not locked up for 10 years in a basement somewhere. So just a couple thoughts off the top of my head, and like we have solutions for all of those pieces, but would love to just chat more.
Yeah, I think one of the fascinating things about NFTs, and this is my personal opinion, but I feel that one of the biggest reasons why it's such a big thing is that it has a lot to do with psychology, where we really find ourselves in this new boom where individuals are finding themselves aligning with specific projects that they truly believe in that could really be the next wave, kind of like how we saw with the dot-com era. So I find myself really fascinated with the different sectors of the NFT communities and the specific projects that they back. And something that I really, really love, especially with NFTs and fractionalization and the different, components that just comes to investing in a lot of people who are, you can call them investors or holder, whatever, is the ability to have these accessible to a lot of individuals. I think that's why it's very fascinating to kind of tie the two worlds together and just the endless possibilities, but also really to have artists, create their own communities that they can continue to engage with and provide value to long term. So I'm really interested in talking to you. I went ahead and sent an email, so I look forward to connecting with you. And sorry to hijack the conversation. Jess invited me up, and I took this as a time to kind of just talk your
I
guys' ear
love
off a
it.
little
I
bit.
love it. No, and when you talk about like you're into the fine art community, when I think about like a fine art collector, they're gonna want like a customized like experience. They're not gonna want to go to OpenSea and purchase the NFT for their, 50,000, $100,000 piece. So I think you guys should connect. I love to see it. But I did bring up In Motion. In Motion, what's going on?
Hey, what's up, Jess? Thanks for bringing me up. Um, I have a quick question. So, how are you guys dealing with the influx of people going into layer two? And also, I personally am, as a developer and engineer, I'm against the custodial system and the Web two authentication systems, and I'm fully on the zero knowledge train. So, how do you deal with that kind of, I guess, dichotomy?
Yeah, so in terms of layer twos, we have partnered with Polygon, and just we've integrated some Polygon collections as well. You're going to see, not going to drop any alpha, but there's going to be a big Polygon collection coming up in the next couple of weeks. We hope we'll make a big splash. And so yeah, like ultimately we want to create a platform where it's just really, really easy to kind of like get to the next L2, right? Integrating Polygon was a bit of work, but we think that like we're getting to a space where like we can just kind of like expand to many more L2s, at least within the EVM compatible space. In terms of what you just said about self-custody and the kind of the trade-offs around custodial wallets, I think we have folks working on the core team of Origin that kind of like, are on both sides of the fence. I think ultimately it's about personal risk and maybe just like, what your maybe the value of the particular thing, right? And so we work with some collections where they're priced in a way that it's not a major investment, right? This might just be like more of a consumption, right? So maybe I do want to swipe my credit card, and maybe I'm fine with actually storing it in its custodial wallet. And ultimately doesn't make me feel great to have private keys hosted somewhere else, but if that allows people to kind of onboard and take the red pill and like, hey, that was your first NFT, I think that's all greatness. I mean, for me personally, like I worked at Coinbase, I still use Coinbase. Like for most of the time, if somebody were to come to me and say, hey, how do I buy Bitcoin, I would point them to Coinbase. Or I'd point them to some centralized exchange to say that that's probably the best way for you. And that could be your first transaction. And as you learn more about the ecosystem, then they could potentially onboard more to say, okay, well, I set up a wallet for you, I set up a ledger for you. Like, here's how you use it, and like that, it's a steady progression to get towards a world of self custody. And I think that probably there are a lot of people that actually segregate their assets. Like they have some things in a warm wallet, a hot wallet, a cold, a cold ledger and things like that. And they might have some things in centralized exchanges. It's really about kind of like risk profile. Ultimately, though, like I said, I think that people don't want custodial solutions. They want the ease user experience ultimately of kind of like custodial experiences. And I think that things about account abstraction, which I'm just like learning more about, and I'm excited to see, how and when we could fit that into our roadmap, would be really interesting. You had mentioned kind of zero knowledge, not an area that I would say I'm a huge expert on. So I would love to learn more from you, how you see this fits in the whole space.
Sure, yeah. I do a whole bunch of development with kind of more cutting edge stuff, interactive NFTs, applications as NFTs, and some stuff with kind of like hobbyist gaming. Only so much one person can develop, but zero. So I started out with the Loopring community with the zero knowledge API they have, which was kind of really easy to learn. So they it's basically the future of layer twos is trustless authentication. So you don't need any accounts, you don't need any passwords. You're basically your wallet is proving who you are based on the proofs that are being handled in the background. This is really the future of Web3. All of this email password nonsense is going to go away, and hopefully it's going to go away for the rest of the world at some point. But the future, as we start entering into a more digital space where we start getting into like things like the metaverse for real, once things like that become available, you're going to start seeing more and more things from the real world offloaded into digital space, and layer twos are going to really be the key for scaling those things. So and your clocks, your weather widgets, your calendars, you can offload them into like augmented reality space. All that kind of stuff can be sold through NFT exchanges or marketplaces. This is, in my personal view, the future. So zero knowledge is going to be really, really important for that. Layer twos are going to be key. So yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Huge, huge. And I too am a fan of a world where we don't have to deal with passwords. It was this legacy of like, okay, here's a password, but now you got to manage all these passwords, and you're not supposed to reuse them, and you put them in LastPass, and then LastPass gets hacked. Ultimately, like every other week, I get some email of like, oh my goodness, here's this breach of like literally 4 billion people's personal information is on the dark web. And I just am like, what am I supposed to do with this? And I think there's got to be a better way.
Completely agree. Oh my God. Before we wrap up, Linus, thoughts on Bitcoin ordinals?
Ooh. Um,
Hot
ooh.
take.
Bitcoin
Sorry, that was
ordinals. Wow. I have not gotten my first Bitcoin ordinal. I mean, I think it's awesome. I think it's probably the most exciting thing I've kind of seen like in the development of Bitcoin in a while. I don't know if there's Bitcoin maxis out there. I love Bitcoin as a store of value for sure, and I'm definitely holding and stacking. But it's one of the reasons why I was so excited about Ethereum, where it's something that can change like rapidly, and people can come up with brand new ideas. In terms of, I think that there's gonna be a cycle of hype, right? Like, oh, we want, like there's this race to be kind of the first and most historic, and like, um, you know, how does okay, porting this particular PFP and making an ordinal, that to me, like there's a coolness factor to it. Not sure if that's going to sustain. Of like, okay, it's literally the same JPEG, and it's just on an ordinal, it's on Bitcoin. But ultimately, if there are different communities that kind of ultimately form around Bitcoin, if the usability aspect of it, kind of just improves quite a bit. I remember even just a couple of weeks ago, it was like, well, you can't mix this ordinal with any of your Bitcoin, otherwise it's like it's all mixed up. Ultimately, like if there is an amazing creator and developer community that surrounds this and continues to improve this, I'm bullish. I'm bullish, right? I think I go back to the original, one of the OG NFTs in the space, which is like CryptoKitties, right? And if you remember that, where CryptoKitties was this amazing game that clogged the Ethereum blockchain, and there are like two conclusions you can kind of come out of it. One was, okay, Ethereum is broken, blockchain's broken, they can't handle this game. How are they going to change the world? And so I think that like the Dapper Labs team made this choice of like, we're going to create our own blockchain, but they failed to take into account that there's another reaction that happened out of the CryptoKitties, which was like, oh, this is an aha moment that we need to solve blockchain scalability. And so I think that there was a lot more focus on layer twos and moves towards proof of stake and all these other things that now you're seeing that come to life. And so it's like if you take a snapshot in time and you just kind of look at the problems, you're missing what is possible. And so I think that folks that said, hey, this is broken, didn't take into account the fact that like Ethereum can get better. And as long as you have an amazing community of builders, we can solve these problems. And I think the same thing will happen with Bitcoin Orbitals, that, I may not fully ape in with all my assets right now, but I know that like if there's a passionate community behind it, that the space is just going to get better. There's going to be a Blur and OpenSea for ordinals, and maybe there's going to be an origin story for ordinals, and that's just going to be healthy for the space. And hopefully they just carve out an amazing niche for themselves. That's not a niche, but like it's just this amazing thing that can grow and just push the space forward. And if it onboards more people into NFTs in the crypto world, I'm all for it.
I totally agree with you. And yeah, I did about the like mixing up the stats. Yeah, somebody did send their BTC gods to Binance. Like they sent the Bitcoin to Binance. It was mixed in with the rest of the Bitcoin. So maybe if you buy Bitcoin from Binance, you might have a sat that has a BTC gods on it. Maybe, just maybe.
Oh man, that's alpha right there. That's going to drive the trading volume and get us to $1 million in BTC price, I think.
Go ahead, Emotion. Go ahead.
Jess, if you don't mind, I'm going to take a moment to show the fact that I am sitting in a metaverse space on spatial.io, streaming your space on a giant screen with a cup of coffee next to me. There's a link in the comments if anyone wants to join me. But yeah, right now it's really lonely in here.
We appreciate it, Emotion. I know you'll have that running up on Friday when we'll be back for crypto and coffee. But yeah,
You
Linus,
better believe it.
it's been a great conversation, and I appreciate you coming by. And we'll see what happens. Maybe you can come back in 4 months and not anything crazy happening on the day that you come back. We'll try to pick a random date.
Oh man, based on my track record, we'll see. But I would love to come back, and hopefully the world doesn't crash. And if it does, then it's probably me.
Can I ask you a question about the Coinbase news today? Like, since you used to work at Coinbase, like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, sure. Let's see. Not financial advice, not legal advice. Obviously, based on my background, you could probably tell I'm an advocate for Coinbase. I worked there. I see how good natured and like how rigorous everything is here. And yeah, we take some intelligent risks here. We're pushing the space forward, but ultimately, like, if they're coming after Coinbase, I personally think that, hey, this is a statement by the SEC of trying to do something. They're trying to pick a major fight here. I'm not a securities lawyer, but I won't comment as to whether or not this is an unregistered security, but I do think that there are some really, really big heavy hitters on the legal and regulatory side that work within Coinbase, that talked about it, that did rigorous analysis about it, that looked at the pros and cons and were like, you know what, this is really good for the space. We're not trying to, pull a fast one on anybody. I tend to side with Coinbase's line, and Brian Armstrong has tweeted about this quite a bit, that the regulations just aren't clear. And there are many, many good actors in the space that ultimately think that pushing crypto forward in a country like the United States, I'm based in the United States, I'm an American. I think that if we do this right, this could be American leadership in the next wave, just like America made favorable policies to like spur the development of the internet. And I think it can be good for innovation and good for the economy and good for just like, the America standing in the world. And it's not really about America. it's about the world. And like, I think that like the governments would be shooting themselves in the foot by taking a different stance, and they might be on the wrong side of history. And I think this is one of those moments that would be a test. And I, personally, I'm proud to still kind of wear my Coinbase alumni flag to say that, Coinbase is gearing up for, we want to fight this in court and we want to prove this out. And there might be fallouts from it, but ultimately, like, this is a forcing function to create clarity in terms of regulation. And I really do hope that there's reasonable regulation, that yes, there are bad actors in crypto, but ultimately, if there's clear regulation that is like, enforceable and is reasonable for businesses to thrive and like follow the rules, like, I think you're going to find some amazing, good people, good builders in the space that wants to follow those rules. But it does seem like the rules are kind of arbitrary, and they're being basically created based off of, like, they call it regulation by enforcement, where, they kind of make up a rule and kind of like sue you for it. And then depending on the outcome of the case, then that becomes like precedent. And the more I read into it, the more I just think that that's wrong. Like, I think we got to work together with regulators to come up with a great solution together.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing that. It's been, yeah, to see like all the news come out today, one after the other. It definitely seems like kind of a targeted attack on just crypto in general. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. But we are out of time. So again, Linus, thank you so much for coming by. You're always welcome to come back. And yeah, everybody, if you're interested in learning more about Origin Story or just Origin Protocol, make sure to follow Linus, follow the Origin Protocol account, and yeah, and we'll be back on Friday. Any last words, Linus?
No, just thank you as always. This was a lot of fun.
Appreciate it. Thank you to all the listeners, and thank you to all the speakers that came up, and have a great night.
Good night, Jess.
Good night.
Take care. Bye.